Welcome and thank you for tuning in to Cougar Spotlight. I am your host, Nick Iacovo. The show is a deep dive into all of the wonderful sports teams here at Caldwell University, featuring behind-the-scenes footage, exclusive interviews, and in-studio analysis. This episode is focused on sprint football. Sprint football is turning a corner, and now a new regime has taken fold. New head coach Louie Matsakis has taken over and is ready to get the Cougars out fast and furious. Coming off the heels of a disappointing end to last season, our Cougars are poised to bounce back and take a step towards a conference championship. Captains Amajuan Murray and Micah Chudkowski are eager to step back onto the field and do some damage. With all three ready to rock and roll, it is time for Cougar Spotlight Sprint Football.
Anytime you can coach somebody who is the best at their position nationally is an unbelievable experience. And Max was great. One, he's a little different. He's from Australia. He was older, so he's like a 21-year-old freshman. So you're not dealing with your typical freshman, sophomore, college student.
Welcome back to Cougar Spotlight Sprint Football. My guest at this time is our brand new head coach, Louie Matsakis. How are you doing today, Coach?
Doing awesome, man. Glad to be here.
It's awesome to have you in today. So first of all, let's start off with a little bit of reflection. You come in now as the third head coach of our Sprint Football program. Walk us through that first meeting you had with the players when you got in. What was the environment like? How did you feel the players responded? What was that meeting in totality like for you?
It was awesome. I mean, I showed up right after Valentine's Day, got to watch the basketball game, which was pretty exciting. And, you know, Mr. Carino took me over to the Alumni Theater. We had our first team meeting like 2 days later, and they all showed up early. All the kids were there, and they were kind of into it. And I explained my vision for the program, expectations for them as student athletes, in all kinds of areas. And they all seemed to buy in. I mean, all the kids were there. For the exception of like 3 kids, they're still on the team, the ones that were there. So that usually doesn't happen in most programs. When you take over, there's usually a lot more turnover. These kids actually liked what I had to say. I think they bought in early, and they want to be part of something special.
And part of special this team looks to be, and you have had quite the special rise as a head coach. You started out, your last tenure, believe it or not, was in Kentucky. You're from 2016 to about 2022 as a special teams analyst. And in 2019, you led the NCAA as a roster in net putting yards, and Max Duffy won the Ray Guy Award. What did that mean to you as a coach at that time?
It was awesome. I mean, anytime you can coach somebody who is the best at their position nationally is an unbelievable experience. And Max was great. One, he's a little different. He's from Australia. He was older, so he's like a 21-year-old freshman. So you're not dealing with your typical freshman, sophomore, college student. And he also played pro Aussie rules football. So coming in, it was like a job. He was a professional. It was more like colleagues than your typical coach-player relationship, and it showed on the field. I mean, we did a lot of great things with him. He got to go to Atlanta during the ESPN College Football Awards, which was awesome down there. It's a great event as well.
Yeah, and you were also part of 7 consecutive bowl games at Kentucky. Do you feel like your coaching experience in those 7 bowl games evolved, or did you feel like you just had to stick to the script during those 7 games?
No, it evolved because especially early on, the first 2 games, they were just happy to be there, because they hadn't had much success before. They hadn't gone to many bowl games. And then, it was 2018, that senior class, they were like, okay, we want to win. Like, going isn't enough anymore. So then the preparation changed. Their attitude at the bowl site changed. Our opponent changed, being in the Citrus Bowl. Now we're playing like Penn State. And they took it a lot more serious. And then all of a sudden we won. And then the 2019 class, they didn't want to be the one to lose. So then they won. And then COVID hit. We played NC State. They wanted to beat them because hardly anyone was at the game. So then they just started to steamroll throughout that. And then, once the transfer portal hit, then you had to readjust for that because now you got guys opting out and all this kind of stuff. And that was a whole other thing.
And now you come into Caldwell. It was awesome to hear that. But you come into Caldwell now. You were coached under Mike Leach and Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops had nothing but great things to say about you when you left. What did you learn from the two of them? What's been sort of the best piece of advice you got from the both of them?
With Coach Leach, with him, just simple is better. You know, he used to always say, you know, an acronym like KISS, keep it simple, stupid kind of thing. He thinks too many people overcomplicate the game of football. And with him, he was so simple in everything, the way he practiced, the way he called games, the way he treated the players, the defense, all these different things. Not overcomplicating things is one thing I learned from him. And I think that's helped me through this process. And then with Mark, Coach Stoops, you know, he is who he is. And he's from Northeast Ohio, Youngstown. It's coal mines, steel mills, blue collar, hard-nosed mentality. And he is true to himself. That's the way he is in staff meetings, at practice, on the field, interactions with officials. You know what it is. You know how he is. And there's too many times coaches, I believe, feel like they need to be like somebody. Be like Nick Saban. Be like Bill Belichick, Bill Snyder. And that's not in their nature. Like Lane Kiffin's not Mark Stoops. But they're both successful in doing it two completely different ways. And with him, it's just trying, you know, me being who I am. And trying to, right now, my first head coaching job, figure out what is that. I think it's the biggest challenge for me, is who I am.
Do you feel like the players have responded really well to sort of your style in terms of both offensively and defensively and the special teams, of course? Do you feel like the team has adjusted at a better pace than even you thought when you came in?
Yeah, I think they do. And the one thing I did notice is a lot of kids come in early to watch film. They're texting their coaches. They're asking questions. They're extremely engaged, which is a good thing. You know, been at some schools and you'll talk to your position and you're like, hey, how much film have you watched this week? Well, you know, I had this test. I didn't do this. I had that. I did this. And they basically just, whatever film you watch and whatever you're doing in practice to prepare, that's all they did. And these kids, a lot of the guys on the roster have really gone above and beyond and are doing the extra things that I think are helping us compress time. Because, I mean, to me, that's the biggest difference. Where before we have 25 practices in 30 days, and here we got 16 practices before our first game. So really we have a 12 practice training camp and 4 to get ready for the first game. And to do that, they have to do work on their own, and all of them are to a T.
Now I want to talk a little bit about personnel. So first of all, you come in, obviously last season was a bit, I don't want to say disappointing, but certainly fell below expectations for what this team, in terms of the talent that was put on the field, the record did not reflect the talent that was presented. And now you come in, basically have pretty much almost the identical roster, but now you got a brand new quarterback leading the helm in Anthony Haynes. Do you feel like Anthony has adjusted really well to the offensive scheme that you've brought in, or do you still feel like there are some growing pains?
No, I think, you know, Anthony's done a really good job. So have our other two quarterbacks. I mean, you know, the freshman and, you know, Lawrence, and like they've all done great things through camp. And I can see, and I've told them all, I'm like, whoever gets named the starter, don't take it for granted because you might not be the starter the next week. Like, it is literally in the world of college football. It's what have you done for me lately? So if one guy's struggling, we'll play the next. And if he has a hot hand, we'll ride that guy through the game. And the way really all three have gone about it is really been very professional. They help each other out. They talk, hey, what'd you see on that play when like the third guy's in, the other two were talking in practice. And it's like they're not like trying to keep stuff to themselves, like, oh, I'm competing. It's more like one of us is going to be out there leading us. Let's make sure we do it successful. How are we going to do it? And, you know, obviously Anthony, he has the deal being a senior. He's a little bit more mature when it comes to some things like that. But, you know, all three of them have done phenomenal during camp.
And you recently just named your 4 captains this season. We're actually going to have 2 of them coming in just a few moments. What went into that decision to naming those 4 players that pristine honor of being named captains of the squad?
Yeah, so I've been part of a lot of programs that have done things a lot of different ways. We've had places where we let the players vote. That ends up being more of a popularity contest. Then we've had parts where the head coach just picked guys that he felt. And then what I ended up doing really was as a staff. So me and the assistant coaches, we sat down and we talked day one, what do we want in a captain? What are our qualities that we're looking for? Somebody that doesn't necessarily have to be a vocal leader, but somebody that leads either vocally or by example, someone that does things the right way, even when you're not looking. Like you kind of see, hey, you're in there watching film, you kind of hear someone rustling outside, you look, and there's a guy with a broom sweeping up stuff on the floor, throwing away because somebody left paper on the floor. And then who's going to help the young kids? Who's going to help those freshmen develop? And at any moment, I said, we can name a captain. Like, if it's one person, it's one. If it's four, it's four. And, like, Maji just was like, he was the first one we named. And it was after, like, 4 practices, we met, and we're like, are there any captains? And hands down, unanimous, every coach was like, oh, Maji, hands down. Right now, he is the leader. And then through the next week or so of practice, other guys started to emerge. And, DK leads in his own way with the D-line and up front the linebackers. And then, Chris and Micah do a phenomenal job on offense, leading with the linemen. They hold receivers accountable. They do the right things. And really, those 4 guys have really stepped up over the past, 2.5 weeks that we've had practice.
That's awesome to hear. And we're going to end off with one final note. So the last 3 years, this team has gone 12-8 in the last 3 years. Do you feel like now that you're stepping in, it's a brand new scheme, brand new system, there's a lot more juice. I've been at the practices and I've seen there's a lot more juice with the players. Do you feel like there's any sense of pressure on you that to get out of the gates quick and early and win a lot of these games quick and fast?
No, not really. I think and we actually talked about this the other day in our team meeting. It's more for us, we can't worry about the externals. You can't worry about what the score is, what the stat sheet says, anything like that. We need to first come together as a team. We need to learn, teamwork, be able to help with the defense is struggling, offense needs to pick it up. If the offense is struggling, defense needs to pick it up. If they're both struggling, we need a spark in the kicking game. There's 3 phases, and once we start coming together, then it's obviously playing smart football. To me, that's the most, especially week 1, that's the most important thing. Are we playing together as a team, and are we playing smart football? Are we eliminating pre-snap penalties? Are we not having turnovers? Are we sustaining drives? Are we holding the opponent to a 3 and out? Or if they're moving, do we create a turnover once they're in the red zone? Those things, if we can do that, especially week 1, then the scoreboard is going to take care of itself, and whatever it says, it says. But to me, that's a successful first game. Then the biggest improvement is always game 1 to game 2. Luckily for us, we got an extra week of that because we got a bye between those 2 games. So that's where now we can go back to the drawing board, figure out who we really are. Because you always have that as a coach, you always have that expectation. This is where we are. Then it's usually about halftime of game 1. And you're like, okay, we aren't what I expected us to be. And we got to adapt, we got to overcome, we got to pivot and figure out who are we and what is the identity of this team. And I think that will make us successful. And again, whatever happens on the scoreboard happens. But our kids are ready. They're eager. They keep looking at the countdown clock, and they're like, 7 days until kickoff. I'm like, yep, 7 more days.
The initial thought was, hey, maybe we're looking at stepping away from football. Maybe it wouldn't be smart. Maybe we're not going to be able to do it. Opted to not have surgery to try and go the holistic and natural way for recovery. Ended up actually in that same season being able to come back and start practicing in the tail end for the last week before we played Army there. Didn't play in the game, but that was all right.
Welcome back to Cougar Spotlight Sprint Football. My guests at this time, number 1, Amajuan Murray, and number 55, Micah Chudkowski. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Of course. So let's start off with, we just had Coach Matsakis in the room before. He said both of you were named captains. How does it feel to be named captain for the team this season?
Well, named captain for the team, I feel as though I've always been that leadership role, but he gave me the opportunity to definitely show that with the team and everything, and I really appreciate him for giving us the spotlight.
For me, I've always tried to be a bit of a silent backbone for the team, so being recognized as a captain, it means a lot for that to be recognized, and especially for a new regime this year with the new coaching staff, new philosophy, everything in that way. It means a lot to have that first step moving forward.
Yeah, we're going to direct this question to Amajuan, and then Micah, will come to you. We'll talk a little bit about your journeys to get to this point. You both are seniors here. Amajuan, I found this out. This was incredible. Of the 21 games you've been a part of in Caldwell, you have played in 20 of them. You have played in 20 of 21 games at CAU. How does the longevity, do you feel like your game has evolved? How did you manage to accomplish that?
Well, what I have day in and day out, definitely have to be more knowledgeable as far as watching film, and the coaches realized that because at first I wasn't starting at first, like you said. So they put me in a package, and for the package, it was called dime and nickel. Those were the only plays I was coming in as far as subbing in for. At the time was Pat Pete, my boy Pat Pete. But other than that, I feel as though I always was definitely that one player I should definitely be on the field because my game was definitely all around because I used to wrestle, so I could tackle, I could come in the box, I could coverage very well, I could play man coverage. So, but over the time, my game very much elevated. They got me playing more safety back because the last 3 seasons they had me playing outside linebacker and safety at the same time. So that was very much an adjustment. But now they just got me in one spot, and I feel as though I feel very comfortable there and unstoppable.
That's awesome. Micah, we're going to head to you. You dealt with a season-ending injury not that long ago. Your road to recovery, I found, has been fascinating. What was that journey like for you to get from where you started with that injury to where you're at now?
When that had occurred, the initial thought was, hey, maybe we're looking at stepping away from football. Maybe it wouldn't be smart. Maybe we're not going to be able to do it. Opted to not have surgery to try and go the holistic and natural way for recovery. Ended up actually in that same season being able to come back and start practicing in the tail end for the last week before we played Army there. Didn't play in the game, but that was all right. And then following that, it has been a bunch of rehab and mobility and strengthening, trying to get that leg up until, being able to be in a place where we can step on and feel comfortable moving laterally, driving, pushing off, explosiveness. So journey back has actually been surprisingly smooth. Dealing with some little bumps and bruises here, little road bumps in a way, but all things considered, I've been very lucky.
And we're blessed to have you back in this team. What was your initial reaction when they said you're clear to go, you're ready to come back onto the field? What was your initial reaction to that?
Pure bliss and excitement. Football, playing it for this long, looking at having it taken away in an unnatural way, that was not a nice thing to look forward to. But anything you can get after that, you're thankful for.
Yeah, we're awesome. And you have also been named a CSFL All-Academic Team member last year. Do you find it easy as a student athlete to balance academics and athletics? Because football's a grinding sport. It's the training camps, 2-a-days, and you got classes on top of that. And the major that you're studying, it's no joke. What has been sort of the key to help you balance academics and athletics?
It really comes down to the individual. So, starting out here freshman year, you don't have that many intensive courses with your major, but starting out your sophomore year, it's all about finding the right balance, like you said. So there's a lot of time involved with football between workouts and practices and, making sure your eating is straight. But really it's just finding your own balance. So you have practice, you have about a solid 3-hour block after that, just making sure you utilize that in the right way.
We're going to pivot back to Amajuan now. So, Amajuan, you have been named back-to-back all-CSFL member for defensive play. Last season, you finished within the top 15 in tackles as a defensive back. What you mentioned before your play style, you've been able to do everything. Do you find that on the field, do you feel like you're more so, let me play into the scheme, or do you just say, I'm just going to do it my way and I'm just going to make the play?
Well, I like the way you mentioned that, but it definitely I'll follow the game plan for the most part. But like it definitely is the intuition in certain plays, like third and 5, like 4th and 1. It'd be little things like that, and especially when we went against Army and Navy, I feel as though I really elevated from those games because it really like I was a young man, but now I really turned into a man after those games, as far as like how far I came and everything. So I feel as though I could definitely I have more intuition now because I got confidence in my game now.
That's awesome. And I went and looked back at some of your guys' high school stats. Majuan, you were named a Max Preps Player of the Week in 2020 for your performance against St. Joe's for Rahway. And Micah, you were not only a captain, you were also a state champion in Sayreville. Walk me through what was the moment for both of you that it clicked in that, you know what, I can play college football at the next level. I can play it at the next level.
I think for me, going back to high school, it was my sophomore year when my varsity coaches started kind of rotating me in on the offensive line and seeing if I could hang with the big boys, because we had some solid dudes on the defensive line. We had top defenses in the state for a few years. We went on a good run. So they kind of used that as like a hamster run, threw me in there, see if I could hang in with them. And then once that went well, it built from there. But I'd say solid moment for me was playing in the MetLife game against Williamstown. That was after our state game. That was for the bowl game where we played North and South, the state winners from there. And going up against a big Michigan recruit as a D end. That was probably the moment where I was like, listen, maybe I can do this a little bit more, maybe on a higher level if I could hang with that guy. But that was it for me.
I definitely say the biggest turn for me that I always wanted to play college football. So like I just didn't know where I was gonna go, where I was gonna commit to at the time. But like freshman year, we had like a freshman seminar class, and it was like write about your goals, like when you do after high school. So I definitely said I wanted to be a college athlete. Like it didn't matter if I was wrestling or football, but it was mainly football because I really have more of a passion towards that.
That's awesome. And then last but not least, we had Coach Matsakis in before, as mentioned. And I found out your team has been, in the last 3 years, 12-8 as an overall record. And you see Coach Matsakis come in, and I've been to a couple of your practices. To say there's a different energy would be an understatement, I would certainly say. And he was talking about the expectations being not super high, but more so we're just trying to develop and get better each day. What are your personal expectations? Now that you see Coach Matsakis in, you've been through training camp, your first game is about a week away. What do you two personally feel like the team can do this year?
Me personally, I feel as though the team could go very far. Because like I said, 2 years ago, we went into Army. We went into 5 overtimes with them, and it was a very close game. I feel as though we shouldn't have lost that game, but, things happen. But this year, I feel like it's definitely better as far as, like, strength, conditioning camp. We're doing a lot of, like, lifting weights that compared to the past, and also just the high intensity practices that we have. Like I'm not gonna lie, like we get banged, like it be hard practices. We be getting banged up, but we come back the next day with more energy and ready to rock and roll.
For me, talking about the energy, the difference, I'd say that it's even though it's a new regime, a new staff. This is a program that's going to be successful. This year, we can definitely do some great things. If we can pull it all together in this first year, come together as a team, start playing together, we'll go far. And even if it's not this year, this program is going to be very successful moving forward. The more time that they have to develop as coaches, as players, as a community, they're going to be successful regardless. But this year, like Maji said, with the energy, with how we've been conducting ourselves, with how the coaches have implemented different aspects of the game, it's going to be a good run.
On behalf of Athletics and Communication and Media Studies, thank you for watching. Be sure to follow our social media pages for updates and upcoming shows. I am Nick Iacovo, and this has been Cougar Spotlight.